and your name.
Katherine Lee.
Year.
Second year.
College.
College 9.
Major.
Politics and Legal Studies.
This year there have been many instances of hate and bias incidents. What do you think of the university's response, and what, if anything, would you do differently?
So in terms of the different issues revolving around campus climate on the UCSC campus this year, I think that there certainly has been responses to different hate crimes and incidents on campus, but I think that more could have certainly been done in regards to it, not only reaching out to protect communities that these hate crimes have been directly impacted by, but also making sure that the larger student body knows that the university does not support these hate crimes that are going on, especially with the flyering and things like that. So in summary, although efforts have been made, I do believe that under-resourced and marginalized student groups on this campus deserve to be supported more. And I think that the political climate directly relates to why these instances are happening more and more on this campus. And there's certainly a heightened sense of fear and prejudice revolving around the rhetoric that is currently being dispersed around our current political climate that has directly impacted how students are, from my understanding, feeling on the UCSC campus currently. So I believe that the university certainly has the power to do more, whether it be listening to students more rather than telling them how they should reach out or feel about the issue. I think that that's incredibly important, and making sure that students consistently have resources for them to be able to uplift communities on this campus.
How do you plan to work with ethnic and identity organizations as the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion?
Right, so the Big Five orgs have spaces and representation in the SUA, but they might not necessarily feel welcomed in these spaces. And I think that's a first issue to tackle. How are these different ethnic orgs functioning in these spaces, and how can we make sure that our Student Union Assembly space is a place that allows for the ethnic orgs to feel invited, to feel supported? I think that I'm a very strong believer in the idea that student government leaders should not be telling what these ethnic orgs should be doing. I'm a firm believer that student government leaders should be listening to them, should be calming them around what they would need, rather than us telling them what they need. So in terms of collaboration, I think that active participation, active listening, and active respect in regards to these organizations is incredibly important to uplift their programs, any actions that they may have, events that they may have as well. Creating a newsletter around that to make sure that their events are boosted and heard within the larger UCSC community is incredibly important. As well as supporting the resource centers that are kind of the base of this campus for providing resources for these different community leadership organizations on campus, and making sure that there's a direct source of communication between all the different organizations, and being as open and welcoming as possible to collaboration if wanted, and referring towards resources and advocating for further resources, because these communities are absolutely under-resourced. It's important to highlight how much that they need funding and university support in regards to how they are represented on this campus.
What have you done to make spaces you have worked in before more inclusive?
Awesome. So I have currently been in College 9 Senate for 2 years now, and being as welcoming as possible to especially frosh that come into these spaces is so important, because these are our future leaders who are going to be inhabiting the spaces that we are building. I think that many frosh coming onto this campus may struggle to find a sense of not only identity but also a sense of community, and I think that working to make sure that folks realize that gender pronouns are super important, introductions are really important, making these students, not only Frosh, but also transfer students and students coming into spaces feel that they are respected in these spaces and that they are welcomed. So in the College 9 Senate community, I've certainly worked towards making sure that new students coming in are supported as the external vice president for College 9 Senate. And in spaces beyond that, I've been a part of the Asian American Women's Alliance as well in the past. So within the Asian American Women's Alliance that I've been a part of before, I've made sure that students feel welcome in those spaces as well, particularly women of color in those spaces. So definitely advocating for folks with intersecting identities in the spaces that I inhabit are incredibly important, and recognizing that their voices should be validated and heard, particularly LGBTQ plus students, women of color, students of color, and intersecting identities within those realms.
And can you please name 3 things you will do to increase retention for underrepresented groups on campus?
Right, so in terms of retention, there are certain political advocacy moves that can definitely be taken in regards to pushing retention. For example, this year, the student-initiated outreach programs were really advocated for and pushed for, which I definitely passed around the petitions for this year. And also, I've spoken to alumni who have actually directly worked on CARE, which is the campaign that pushed forward the measures that support student-initiated outreach programs, as well as funding for the resource centers. So not only having alumni help, but also advocating within the Student Union Assembly space to make sure that these retention services are being supported, like engaging education and all the programs that fall underneath it, whether it be yield or non-yield, and also supporting undocumented student services in supporting the students that are undocumented on this campus in terms of retention. Resource centers and the different programs that they may have are incredibly important too. Retention is something that is known about on this campus, but movements toward it are not as pressed to be focused on. So actions would be making statements if things like the SIO, for example, are threatened on this campus, especially with the new sunset that just happened with the program and the measure, and then being very vocal about making sure that students are being retained on this campus and outreaching to students who will be coming into this campus as well is incredibly important, especially from underrepresented and marginalized communities.